Hello and welcome to the live coin Q&A, everybody. Welcome back, and welcome to our favorite counterfeit expert extraordinaire, Jack Young. Welcome back, Jack. Welcome back, Jack.
You like my shirt?
I love the shirt. I do. And you'll notice that Amanda and I are wearing some she's got her Coin Show podcast t-shirt on, and I have my Ancient Coin podcast. Thank you, Aaron Burke and Mike Nodelman.
Awesome.
I promised Mike I would wear this. He's been so excited. He said, I can't wait to see you wear that hat. There it is. And it's got, don't be a doofus in the back. I think that's what it says.
That's important, yes.
That's very important, yes, especially around here. So this is exciting. This is going to be a long one today, longer than usual. So before we get started, I want to tell everybody that's watching, you're going to be watching this as a premiere, just like we've done in the past. So Jack and myself and Amanda will be in the chat to answer any questions. Mostly Jack. He'll be able to answer most of your questions. So yeah, so fire away as you're watching this. And it's best if you put at Jack Young so that it highlights his name when you're asking a question, so he'll see it, because sometimes the chat goes fast and it gets passed. So there's that. I also want to remind everybody, if you are not members of the ANA, the American Numismatic Association, please give them a look-see. It is a great organization. It's our national coin club. Consider joining that. Also, Kaneka. Please go to the links in our description below and see if those are organizations you'd like to join, because they're worth it. All right. Well, Jack, are you ready to get this started? Because I am excited to see this.
Absolutely. I'm ready.
All right.
Okay. So the topic today, the top 5 counterfeits that I have seen from my Dark Side group and, of course, live coin Q&A. This is an image I used in a lot of different things. Just a little history. I actually had my first exhibit display with EAC in Baltimore at the Whitman. And my friend took the image, as there was a lot of interest the entire time that I was there in my booth. The closest to the camera is Charles Morgan. He's been a huge supporter of the articles that I've been writing. And we're actually up to 84 now published on Coin Week. One thing I found out very quickly is the number of folks who believe and rely on a TPG holder. Several were in disbelief when I showed them a counterfeit large cent and a genuine TPG slab. Comments typically were, it can't be counterfeit. It says it's genuine on the slab. So after submission of about 50 articles, Coin Week and Charles Morgan sent me a note, and he said, have you thought of doing one on the 5 or 10 most deceptive counterfeits you have ever seen, followed by what tipped you off to their fakeness, if that's a word? I responded, I thought that was a great idea. And so here we are today. And just some brief history. All of these and approximately 20 others can be traced back to one counterfeit ring. The money man was in China. He purchased genuine examples, many from good dealers on eBay, and then shipped them to what I called the Den in College Station, Texas, where various seller IDs sold the clones on eBay. I'm not aware if anyone knows where the counterfeits were actually coined, but they were sold out of College Station. I had the opportunity to present my findings on these at the time to Secret Service in a face-to-face meeting, compliments my friends in the Anti-Counterfeiting Task Force back in 2018. As a result of that meeting, I had follow-up phone conversations with both Texas Customs and Border Protection agent, who was aware of the location I had identified, as well as a Treasury Department agent on the same subject. Although I never heard what happened, and I was told I likely would never hear, the group disappeared, including all seller IDs on the bay, and I didn't see any other new varieties from this group after that. So on to the top 5, starting with number 5. I'm going to go in ascending order. The 1796 S85 large cent, the 1872 S seated $50. I know, Polly, you saw that one. the 1798 S158 large cent, which is the coin that started me down this rabbit hole back in 2015, the 1836 Gobrecht dollar, and a 1797 S139 large cent. Okay, so number 5, the 1796 S85 large cent. This one was identified as a fake by a friend and a colleague of early American coppers for reasons apparent when compared to a genuine example. Interestingly, I found another example with matching marks but some apparent enhanced details, which led me to believe that the counterfeiters, had actually updated the die after they had struck this example. Further research resulted in finding the original hold example, and we realized that we were actually working with coins that were repaired by the counterfeiters. They were buying lower grade examples with damage and making pretty good repairs, technically pretty good repairs. And that was a major point for us because it allows us to start looking a little farther in our range of counterfeits and source coins as we were looking for damaged coins, and many of them through the same sellers. Subsequently, this one was certified by a major TPG, and the image taken highlighted the apparent star. And it's kind of funny because I had this coin for a while, and once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. But you see the yellow arrow, and you see what appears to be a star in front of the lips of liberty. There's also a doubling 1 cent, and you can see it faintly in this image, but 1 over top of 1 and cent over top of cent, actually in larger font. So you're seeing an undertype actually coming through the counterfeit strike for the counterfeit coin. And this, unfortunately, is the PCGS TrueView image, which, it exists on this image, but it no longer exists. The certification was removed after some discussion about this coin. As a result, it forced us to give just a little closer look to the coin. And that's when we decided and determined that it actually was struck over another coin. I had suspicions for some time that the counterfeiters were actually buying call large cents, and we'd actually seen that 2 of the sellers that I was watching, buyers that I was watching, had actually purchased some call large cents. So again, this was kind of a large discovery for us, that it was actually struck over this call large cent. And that's really the reason why several of these tested as correct copper at the time that I sent them out to a testing lab. I actually sent genuine and suspect coins to a testing lab in Pennsylvania who did XRF at a couple different levels and a couple other tests, and were confused by some of the results because several of the large cents that I sent in that I knew were struck counterfeits tested as being good era genuine copper. And so this actually gave us a pretty good indication of why that was. And having looked for some time, this was the first one where I actually was able to prove that. So I had a friend in another coin forum who does computer-aided design. And I asked him to actually go in, and we kind of talked on a couple different forums in EAC, and we had enough detail to kind of determine what era possibly the undertype was, what the call large cent was. And it turned out 1843 fit really, really well. You can see the star fits, the 1 cent fits. The overlay is really pretty cool. And in fact, if you have the coin in hand where Liberty is, you can see the T and the Y bleed through on the genuine coin. So really my favorite coin in my collection. It's kind of like the dark star of the dark side, if you would. Oh, one other comment I wanted to make. There's a total population of 2 TPG certified coins. There were a couple raw coins that we had seen. And then there was the hold genuine source coin that had been repaired. So we've seen about 5 of them. The 2 TPG certified coins are both in my collection. I own both of those. So this is the current slab for that coin. And again, in this image, you can still see the star. And again, I still chuckle at myself the number of times I've looked at this coin and didn't notice that. But once you've seen it, and a little
So
sad.
can I ask you a question?
And this is a great format to do that. Yes.
Because it
Yes.
is the Q&A.
It is a Q&A, and I appreciate it. I was going to ask you to do that, actually.
Okay.
Really.
When was the last time that you actually were presented with an example of this?
When was the last time I saw one of the 1796s?
Yes.
Back in 2017, I think, was the last one. This was one of the first, back in 2015, when, like I said, we started down the rabbit hole. This was one of the coins that we saw. And it was about a year later, year and a half later, when I found a second one. But again, the details had been enhanced, and I didn't put an image of it here, but I have that coin. And it's in a different TPG holder, but it has all the same matching marks. We'll get into that.
Where were these found? Where did you find these?
These were found on eBay.
On eBay.
When I go back and talk about, the den out of Texas, there were about 8 different seller IDs, and they're all out of a company called Easton International, and that was in College Station, Texas. And we also tied them to the guy that was buying the coins, who was out of China, and we identified who he was as well. So he would buy the coins would be shipped to College Station, Texas. And then those folks were not only selling clones, the struck counterfeits, they were also selling the genuine coins. So, it got kind of confusing. You would end up seeing, both. I actually own in my collection an 1854 huge O quarter, which we all believe is the repaired source coin. And the TPG identified it as having been tooled, and it was. I mean, it had a big hole in it, and it was repaired. But all the other ones that we found, 6 or 7 of those, all have the same matching marks. So this one's in a slab. I didn't really want to take it out and do anything with it, but it's either the source coin or it was actually the another one of the counterfeits. But as far as the 1796s, we have not seen another one in quite some time.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why, I just wonder why it just all of a sudden stopped, if it was because they were identified. And
it's a great question. And, I think about it as well. I am sure that some of these coins are in collectors' collections. I mean,
they just don't know.
In my mind, they certainly are.
Yeah.
And, but the source dried up after my meeting with Secret Service and then CBC. Everything disappeared. I mean, eBay kicked all the sellers out, so every seller disappeared. You couldn't even go in and see any history on them anymore. So, I think it was a pretty significant event when that actually happened.
So they knew, they knew it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they absolutely did know. So, it was shut down. But
that makes sense.
I've only seen 5 of these, and one of those is the repaired source coin. So there is a genuine coin out there. NGC had not slabbed it because they had noticed that it was altered surfaces, which was a good call in their case. But I know of 2 that are actually in holders. So this is mine. Again, that cert has been deactivated as well. So any of these coins, as we go through them, when you see images in the slab, you can pretty much bet that slab's not active anymore. So, and in most cases, I notify the TPGs myself.
Yeah.
All right. So where am I here? Oh, so again, I said this is one of my favorites in my collection. Obviously, Bob Julian is just an amazing artist for anybody who doesn't know him. I actually commissioned him to do this coin, and it's fabulous. I've got 2 images that are originals, one of the obverse and the reverse, and then he also does prints. And this print was actually for sale. It is the only counterfeit that he's done. He actually joined one of our counterfeit groups. I think he enjoyed that.
I know. Yeah.
So you see 1796 struck over a call, 1843, Jack Young's Dark Side collection. So really a really cool piece. He does.
So for those of you that don't know, Bob Julian is an artist. Now this image that you're seeing on the screen is not a real coin. This is a drawing of a real coin.
It is a pencil drawing.
pencil drawing.
It is,
of
to me,
It's
it is
the
just
layering. He
so
does this
amazing.
layering thing. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just. I have
And,
one of his, but it's amazing.
and these are not inexpensive, but I guarantee you this, he should have charged more than he did for just his artistic ability and the time he spent on it. And because he knew me, I'd met him at one of the coin shows, and I showed him the coin. We talked about it, and finally I twisted my own arm and said, I'm going to make this investment. He actually would post on my page and a couple other pages interims showing the process. It was showing how he was drawing it, and it's just amazing stuff. And again, when you look at it, and he and I talked about enhancing the details on this. You know, he's done so many coins and so many high profile coins, and he always asks, do you want the image to be true to the coin? I mean, every scratch, nick, and cranny. Do you want me to enhance some things? Do you want me to smooth it out? I mean, and that's all to the owner and the person that's commissioned the artwork, what he wants. But I wanted some of the undertype to really pop.
Yeah.
And so that's what he did. And of course, that star, I mean, you can't miss the star or the 1 cent. So he just did a tremendous job.
So good. Yeah.
Okay. Next slide. Now that you got me completely lost.
I'm sorry.
So I did find the whole genuine coin, and that is it. And you can see it had a massive hole in it. Why in that location, you know, no one would know. But that coin was expertly repaired. It was plugged. It was re-engraved. It ended up going to PCGS. Like I said, they kicked that one out, but they did a really good job on the repair. And if that was done in China, if that was done in Texas, again, we don't know. So I talk about the main repeating major points or attribution marks, if you would. These are circulation marks. These are things that are not in a variety of a coin. These are things that are in a particular coin because it suffered some damage or misuse or whatever in circulation. So the first thing we look at, I show the re-engraved hair. So the repaired source coin versus a genuine coin, the hair strands are different thickness. They flow differently. They're just different. And that was because that was re-engraved. And it was done pretty well. If you were an expert of these and you saw that, you might initially think that it was just a tool to, you know, example that somebody had done a repair. There is a pit at the 9. There are dents under the left stem that I circled. There are also some leaf and stem dents, and then there's a scratch at 1 in the date. And this is common to all 5 of the examples that we've seen. So that's not a variety. It wasn't in the genuine dies, but it's in the false dies. It's in the dies that are used to strike the counterfeits. So now we're to number 4. And I have a lot of people love this coin. This is the 1872 S Liberty Seated $50. This was a coin that got me introduced to the Liberty Seated Collectors Club, the LSCC, after finding a raw example listed on the bay by one of the known connected bad sellers. So here you go. I'm looking for ways to find counterfeit coins. I've identified 7 or 8 bad seller IDs on eBay. And one of them has an image that looks like all of his other images of a gray looking coin. And I go, doesn't look right. And I know the seller's bad. So what's going on with it? And just like the S85, it was initially suspicious because of the seller. And then I went in, and Paul and I talk about my first step in anything when I look at a suspicious coin: attribution, attribution, attribution. I couldn't attribute the coin. It didn't match. So I thought maybe I better get a hold of some experts. And I was aware of a gentleman in the LSCC, John Frost, and sent him a note. And the next thing I know, I get a response back and said, oh my gosh, you found one of the counterfeits. And they had actually found one themselves, and it was in a TPG holder. And similar to other coins we'll talk about here, the initial thought was maybe it was a new variety. Maybe they had done something interesting with that reverse that no one knew about, and they went on. But when they matched it to mine, the one that I had found, we had the same repeating marks, and that pretty much eliminated the possibility that it was a new variety. like I said, I actually took experts to figure it out, and that's really why I joined the LSCC. The little thing at the bottom there was actually an alert they put out. They put out an initial alert about this coin, telling all their members, "Hey, look what we found!" And of course, it's in a TPG holder. So this is an incredible image, I think. One of the things about this one, when I talk to other experts, is just the depth of strike and the detail associated with the coin is probably better than they normally see. And when you really talk to the experts, more specifically, they will tell you that obverse was actually an 1872P, and they know that by the die state. And they would tell you that the reverse was not supposed to be an 1872S, but it's actually the 1875S reverse. And then these guys get into counting edge reads. I guess experts need things to do. So they actually counted the edge reads, and it's from an 1876. So there was absolutely nothing right about this coin. I actually nicknamed it a Frankenstein monster coin. I wrote the only article I ever had published in the Numismatics was actually on this coin. And I've seen a number of other articles from the LSCC and myself as well, but there was just nothing right about the coin. But the coin is beautiful, and obviously it fooled enough experts that we know of at least two of them that are in TPG holders. So these are the two that we know of. The one on the left is the LSCC's initial one that they found. It was interesting. I found mine at the same time. Mine was actually in a major auction house, and it was one of those things where, because I was looking and because I knew what I was looking for, there was an option at that auction house, make an offer to owner, and I did. And kind of a sidebar conversation here, I made an offer that was accepted, but I also notified my friends at the LSCC that I found it. And the next thing you know, there were a lot of phone calls going on between the TPG, the auction house, the owner, the Liberty Seated Collectors Club, and ultimately me. And there was an agreement that we could purchase that coin, but it had to be cracked out of that holder. So that image is how it was in the actual auction house. That certain number no longer exists. That coin was raw. But now it's in a different TPG holder as genuine. So again, they're that deceptive. And so this is the raw example. This is the one that actually started me on this particular coin in this variety. And again, when I was talking about the kind of gray appearance in the background, these guys were not very imaginative. There were, again, I said 7 or 8 different sellers. Their images all looked alike. I mean, they all had the same background. They all had the kind of same gray color. I don't know what that coin actually would have looked like if I had bought it and put it in hand, and that goes back to 2016s. So, but it has the same matching marks on it when you looked at it as the others did. And so here's another one of my little collages on the key attribution points, or we call them sister marks, if you would. You see the counterfeit, and you see what the S looks like and the position of it in the reverse. And then I put the 3 correct reverses for 72S, and it's not even close. And then the horizontal dings that you see on the obverse, that's common to everyone that we've seen. There is a ding in the O, and then the die scratch on the T is kind of cool because that die scratch is from an 1875S. So again, it just confirmed exactly what that coin was between the die states and the different dies that created that coin. All right, we done with that one, Paula? I know you like that one.
I do like this one. Yeah,
it's a great coin.
Yeah, I do. But I'm a fan of the seated series. Period. The seated design. Right. I did have a question though. All of those now it may just be the photos, but they all look really dull. And with the amount of detail on those, I would expect to see quite a bit of luster on them. So do you know if those in hand have any luster, or if they're all just really dull?
Well, the one that
or if it's just the photograph.
No, my coin has a lot of luster to it. You saw the NGC picture. Would you say that has luster?
Yeah, well, that last one we looked at. So the
last one we looked at is the one that I said.
This one.
That's the one where the counterfeiters' pictures all look the same.
All look the same.
All
Okay.
of their pictures are
so you don't actually know what these
gray.
coins look like in hand.
I don't know what
Okay.
that one looks like in hand, but the two in the TPG holders have luster.
Right.
And the one that I sent to NGC that took those images, that's mine. I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful luster to the coin. So yeah, then I tested it, and then of course it is silver. So we know that at least that, but it tested at a higher percentage of silver than what it should have for the.
Are they using foreign world coins? Are they using world coins to strike these on, or
I don't
making their own planchets? Or
I'm pretty sure they got to making their own planchets, because I was sending in. We talked about the top 5. If I go top 10, then I've got a couple half cents that I would throw in here. And the half cents, that there's an 1805 and an 1806. Those planchets tested differently than the other ones. And in fact, the 1805s were really unique in that they had a very high level of zinc, and that made us very suspicious about what the melting pot actually was, because it shouldn't have been there. And only the 1805 large cents of anything I sent up there had measurable amounts of zinc. So I think they got to where they were making their own planchets, but I believe that they bought some call large cents initially and either cut them down for some of the half cents or just use them for some of the large cents. But the numbers that I have, I only have one coin where I can clearly show that there's undertype, and it's a matter of how well they struck up and how they struck them. They strike them in collars, so I don't talk about that a lot, but
we did talk about that before.
We have, and these are struck in collars as well, and so that ends up with another tell, if you would, if the coin's not in a holder or you can actually see the edge.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So number 3, and that is the 1798 S158 large cent. Certainly one of my favorites. I've handled several different ones. I've seen them in several different venues. And as I said initially, this was the one that actually started me down the rabbit hole of the counterfeit coins back in 2015. It was a star of the presentation of the meeting that I had with DC Secret Service. The first one reporter was initially investigated as a new unknown variety of 1798 large cent, kind of like the same thing with the 1872 S half dollar. It didn't attribute. And so the question was, is it something brand new? Is it something we've never seen? A new non-collectible variety? But as soon as it came up, several of us found some others that were just like it. And not only were they just like it as far as some of the attributes, it was just like it from some of the circulation or sister marks. So at that point, then we knew we had some counterfeits. Following images include the Discovery coin, my first discovered one, and another one from the same group of bad sellers that were on eBay. So the left-hand coin is actually a Discovery coin, and as you can see, it was in a TPG holder. The middle one is the one that I found like within a day. It was on eBay, and again, with the connected sellers that I started putting together, that network, it was initially raw. And then the one on the right, if you saw it in hand, it was intentionally corroded. I mean, it was beat up, corroded, weathered artificially, however it was done. But it still carries all the main attribution points for the counterfeit. So they were going through some cycles here. I mean, the one on the left was a pretty nice coin, and it appeared that it had been cleaned or whizzed or, messed with a little bit from the surface standpoint. Mine had a big gouge on the top of it, and they apparently were trying to hide some things when they did that, and then they really tried to hide some things with the one in the ICG holder. So, and that's the only one in an ICG holder, I will say, out of all of these coins and all the ones we've seen, that is the only one that slipped by my friends at ICG.
Isn't that funny?
It really is.
I think that's funny.
And
because when you talk to people about the grading companies, that they always push that one to the back and and I think it's funny that it's the one that has just one.
Well, you know how I feel about that.
I do.
I know those people. So yeah, I send them coins quite often. I love the service and I like the expertise there. So this was a pretty cool image. This was done by a friend in the EAC, just kind of a collage, where the bottom one is my coin, the raw coin that ended up in a TPG holder. And we just kind of circled some of the main things that we knew were wrong with them. Two of those are just major points. The long Y, which was longer than any 1798 large cent ever known. And of course, the big pit or dimple in the bust became a big marker for it as well. And then he just showed a genuine on the top and what that Y and what Liberty should actually look like. Mm-hmm. That raw coin, again, ended up in a holder. It was the one that I took to Baltimore. It was the one that people looked at and said, it's got to be genuine because it says so on the TPG holder. And it's like, yeah, okay. I hope you grow from this. So this is just another good close-up image of the dent, if you would, the bust crater, as I called it. Even in that really weathered, beat-up looking thing that's in the ICJ holder, you can still see that dent's in all of them. And then the one at the bottom, I call this one, oops. Every now and then you see a book and they have an oops chapter. Well, this one was in a TPG holder, and not only was it slabbed as genuine, but it was actually put on Variety Plus as a die state for the S158. And yeah, it got removed after I talked to some folks and said, you might want to take that down, but not after, of course, I got a screen print. So yeah. And again, this started as an S158, and maybe just a little history here. They took an S158 and it apparently had some damage, and they reworked it, and that resulted in that Y being so long. But that coin had some pits and some scratches and some other things wrong with it. And they addressed those things and created the dies, and that's what created all these clones as we see them with all the common marks. And right on cue, there it is. That is actually the source coin and the believed source coin. It's hard to be sure when you haven't got the coin in hand. Obviously it's got all the marks. I guess the reason I look at this more as the source coin, you see discolored areas and areas where it was repaired. S158 in that particular die configuration has 3 faint die cracks back behind the head, and this one shows it. None of the clones show that level of detail for whatever reason, so you don't see that. The next variety, S159, actually uses the same obverse, and those are stronger in an S159, I think always seen in that variety. And then in this die configuration, the reverse should have a massive die crack that starts at the T in United, runs right through the ribbon and goes all the way up to the S in States. And this doesn't. And if you looked at it closely, the die break starts at the rim of the T and it ends at the rim of the S, but the rest of it's gone. And so this coin was doctored to the point that they actually reduced and eliminated the die break. So that's what made that coin so difficult when the first one showed up in the TPG holder. Was it kind of looks like an S158, but it's an intermediate die state because the die break's not there, and we've not seen one like that. And then the T's too long. So maybe, and I mean, hope springs the eternal. It'd be great to find another new one. But that big dent in the bust was kind of a giveaway when you saw everyone had that. And
that's a big tell right there.
That's a huge tell.
Yeah, that's a huge tell. Can you let everybody know what you mean by S158, just in case you
Sure. Sheldon created a nomenclature, if you would, identifying the known early large cents. And so S1 is actually a 1793 Ameri, the AMERI variety, which was thought to be, the first coin struck. And then it goes all the way through the where does it stop? 1814. So each die variety has an S number. So when you get into 1798s, there were so many different die varieties. This is the 158th, if you would, designated by Sheldon. And but it's a good way to go in and identify varieties of early large suns. So we're all talking about the same thing. When someone says, you know, it's an S159 or an S44 or whatever it might be, those are all documented. He did a book called Penny Whimsy with some pretty decent images, but you know, people have gone well beyond that, and so you can get books that show images of every one of these, and it helps you attribute a coin then, and you know what you're looking at.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so the repeating attribution points would be the next slide. And so again, just like I've done in all the other ones, the first thing that we talk about was the shape and length of the Y, the counterfeit on the left, genuine on the right. Then of course the dimples in the bust, or crater, as I said. And then I talked a little bit about the last one. The reverse die break was removed. And so that made it an improbable die state, and really is why we all started looking at this coin initially. If they hadn't done that, I don't know. Maybe we wouldn't have seen it as what it is, but thought it was just a tooled example. All right, so number 2, the 1836 Gobrecht dollar, and I call this one a prolific TPG certified counterfeit. You'll find out here in a minute. This was found in a couple very major auction venues. One I know sold, one I think did not. I've written a couple of previous articles, been in the LSCC's Gobrecht Journal. These examples, the one on the left was the last one that I documented, and probably just a couple years ago, Paula. This one actually ended up in a dealer's inventory. You know, I think we talked about it a little bit earlier before we start recording. And then the one on the right is my example, and that example actually came from China. After the den of thieves all disappeared, one of them was still in China and still making contacts. And that coin came from China through the Netherlands and then to the U.S. They professed 100% that it was genuine, but of course we proved that it was not. But it's in a TPG holder as well. So sometimes I talk about All in the Family. Well, here's the family. This is just a collage of a number of the examples, all different. Unfortunately, every one of them has ended up or was in a TPG holder as genuine. The two in the middle, left and middle, were both in a major auction house. The one in the middle on the right is actually the repaired source coin, and just above it on the right with the hole is the hold genuine coin. And the one on the left was the one from China that's now in a TPG holder as well. So as many of the deceptive certified examples, you know, there was a genuine source coin, and they continue to be coins that had some impairment, some damage. So you saw that there was a hole that was actually repaired prior to making the false dies. And that hole was so small, but it affected and it particularly affected the back side of the F. And that required tooling after it was plugged. So the most obvious result of the tooling was in the tail of the F. And you look at it there, I called it the blunted F, if you would. You can see what a genuine looks like in the middle. The repaired one, and then another counterfeit one on the right. You know, they're blunted. They don't have that taper to them that a genuine coin has. So again, this one was harder because the damage was so small that a lot of folks would have missed that, you know, that tell, if you would. But there are a bunch of other tells. You go into the next one. And I made the comment that since reporting these, there was one that was actually in a dealer's inventory. That is correct. I know that it ended up going back to the TPG. One thing about these being in a TPG holder, as bad as that sounds, they are absolutely spot on about their guarantees. And so if there is a mistake, and I'm focusing on mistakes here, and they see so many coins, and so many of these are so good that they got past multiple experts. So it's really no slap against anybody. But the TPGs, once they are aware that it was a mistake and it's proven it was a mistake, they will buy it back. And they will buy it back for the price that the individual has in it. And I know that because I've been involved in a couple of those actually going that way. And so we have a lot of people that don't like TPG slabs. And one of the first things they want to do is crack it out of the slab. And that's probably one of the last things that I would suggest doing, only because what if you're not 100% correct? What if that 1872S is cracked out of a slab, and then you realize after you got a few $100s invested in it that it's not genuine? So the attribution points here, and they're in that entire family that I showed. Every one of those examples has those deep major scratches by the arm, have those dents over the knee, have that depression under the cap, have the blunted F, and also a deep series of scratches that you see there that I've circled, and every one of them has it. And you see one, you might say, well, it's just a well-worn, damaged coin, and then you see the second one, it's like, uh-oh, Houston, we got a problem.
Not in exactly the same spot.
They're all, So, yeah. All right, so here we are. Number one, numero uno. This is the one that I had a friend, after I showed him this coin and my evidence, sent me a text at 2:00 in the morning, and thankfully I was not up, telling me that he couldn't sleep at night because of this. I sent the coin and the evidence to another expert of early copper, and there are several that are really good at this stuff. And initially he wanted to say that he thought it was good, and then when I showed him the photographic evidence, and then he looked at some other attributes on the coin, he came back and said, you're right. And he said, this one is scary. As scary as the other ones are, this one really is. Possibly only one actually certified genuine. It's been certified by 2 different TPGs. The other certified example is likely the repaired source coin, and I'll show images of that.
Thank goodness.
And we did find a couple raw ones too. And then, you don't know where the raw ones are now, Paula. You don't. They went from. When you get, we'll talk about eBay and having listings removed. I mean, it's good to have a listing removed, but you didn't remove the guy.
Then where does the coin go?
You did, and now you don't know where it went. So
yeah.
So these are images of this one, and like I said, this is one of those ones that keeps you up. The subject example, the first time it was slabbed, is on the left. Explained it to a gentleman. He actually cracked it out. Of course, that cert was deactivated. It's now in the slab you see in the center. That cert's deactivated as well. The one on the right was the first one I saw, and you can see that big streak on it. That's why I'm considering it possibly the repaired source example, and then I'll show in another image, why I think that. But this coin is so good that it ended up in the EAC's condition census as number 18 for the variety, and that's actually the image. And of course, early copper guys net grade stuff for any kind of defect. They net graded it to verified 30, but it's a really nice coin if it were a genuine coin.
Oh my God.
Next one. So this is the current slab, and again, it's deactivated. Again, it's just that scary. I mean, when the experts look at it and they want to argue about whether it's good or bad, and then finally decide it's bad, I don't know what chance the TPGs have until possibly they see some of this type of information. That's why we do these types of podcasts and do these types of articles. I've written articles on this particular coin. I don't know that anybody would be fooled by it now, but I don't know. I went back to my same friend who did the CAD drawings and asked him to do something with this one, and that's what we see on the next image. And this is cool, and unfortunately I can't make it a whole lot bigger, but he mapped 2 known counterfeits, and then he mapped a genuine coin, and it goes into color density. Okay. And those things that were common to the two counterfeits, but not in the genuine coin, are bright red. And so there's a scratch at the ribbon close to the one of the denominator. You see that's a red mark. There are some red scratches on the obverse at the throat and across the coin, going towards the ear. There are a number of red marks that you see that came out of this exercise. And again, if we had it blown up in a large size, you'd be able to see that really pretty cool.
Yeah, I can. Let me see if I can get it. Nope, I can't.
Yeah, I think you're kind of limited how big you can make it go.
Yeah.
But then we'll go to the next one.
Okay.
And so there's the genuine source coin. We know that coin was genuine. You see the deep scratches in that coin.
Yeah.
You see a number of other marks. It's got a die state marker that goes from the nose to the Y. They like to try to get rid of that in their coins. Again, it seemed like anytime they saw a die break, they wanted to get rid of it. I guess they thought it looked bad. So the matching marks, you can see I put some arrows here that show the scratches. There was a dent over the C in America, and there's that scratch on the reverse again that showed up in the red image. So they went in and addressed this coin, dressed the dies, and then basically minimized the significance of the scratches and the marks, and then created the dies to make the counterfeits. It's amazing work, really.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah.
And then my friend and Larson expert Bob Grellman, he does a attribution and a grading thing. He does it for $1. He's just amazing. He's been in the business forever, and he does his grading cards, and you can see what mine says. 1797 S139 late die state die struck counterfeit, finely granular 45/30, and of course the dreaded JY. We know whose initials that is, right? So there you have it. These are the top 5 deceptive counterfeits. As I said, these are the ones that keep me up at night. We talk about the ones on the eBay, and I chuckle about the Morgans, and you and I have had fun with that, and we've had a lot of fun with that even this week.
Even more fun this week than we usually have.
This week, exactly, the last couple of days. But these are the ones that I'm not seeing this level of expertise, and the problem is they were using the best technology at the time, and now it's dated. Okay, the S158, the source coin, we found it sold in an eBay listing in 2013, and then we found the first counterfeit in 2015. So we saw that in several others, the Gobrecht and a couple of the others. There seemed to be a 1 to 2 year lapse from when they bought the genuine coin to when we started seeing the struck fakes coming out. But they are that good that, the one I have, the 1836 Gobrecht, it's the second orientation struck, and I'm not an expert on Gobrechts, but they had 2 strikings in 1830s that are dated 1836. And some people call the second one a restrike, and the way it was oriented. And the TPG noted that on the holder, and they also noted it was repaired. Well, the source coin was repaired, but this one's counterfeit. And had they actually scanned it, it's 95% silver. So, it's above standard of what was standard, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's more like sterling or even above than what it should have been. So, details, right?
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder so you talk about how those, you're not seeing the quality of counterfeits like those as much today. And maybe this is a case where technology is not their friend, because maybe the more mass produced they are with these counterfeits now, the less quality they're getting.
Yes, I think you're right, but I guess where I was going with that was, as technology continues to evolve, and I was in manufacturing 38 of my years of my life, there's so much you can do with computer-aided design and 3D scanning and 3D printing, and my goodness, maybe there's better counterfeits out there that we're not acknowledging yet. And we talked about in an early large sense, there's a condition census, and they're real sure what the top 10 coins are, and they're documented, and you can buy books, and I have the books. And there's hardly ever one that's perfect. And so I guess my thought is that if someone goes in with the best technology and creates the perfect large cent counterfeit, everybody's going to be on it. They're all going to say there's something wrong because there's no blemishes. We've never seen a coin like that. And then you get into pedigree, and you get into history, and those things also help you, in identifying that, that coin is genuine. But that's the fear. The fear is maybe somebody's even better. Yeah. But so far what we're seeing are more of the mass-produced pieces of junk. The Morgans are cast, and they give you an appearance when you see one of really shiny, but when you get in and put it under a microscope, they're terrible. And in most cases, the O doesn't fill out. There's some problem in their tooling, whatever it might be. But, and then they scan, and, there's no silver in them at all, So, but they're just pumping those things out.
And maybe this will be a case of where AI may come in handy down the road. Maybe that, because, I've talked about this before. AI scares me when it comes to coins and numismatics, period, because right now the information that AI is giving people is at best incomplete, and for the most part completely inaccurate. But perhaps that may be where it could be useful when they are scanning the coins and things like that. Maybe it may be more useful than the human eye when coming to, you know what I mean? Like,
I know exactly what you mean. And I guess I look at the other side of it. Maybe AI will help them create the better counterfeits. So there you go. Both sides. Skynet is coming, right? We all know that. But, we've tried computer grading, and we've tried a number of things. That stuff has only been as good as the information that was put into it. And
with anything AI, right?
So, and unfortunately grading is pretty subjective still,
And as it should be.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I don't collect Morgans. What the heck's the 67 versus 68? I don't know, and I don't care, because I won't see it in the early copper that I look for.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, I'm so skeptical when it comes to AI anyway. And as far as grading goes, I can see where maybe some of the less technical aspects of it, AI may come in handy, like maybe detecting cleaning and things like that. But as far as like overall grading, I just can't see how it could ever take the place of a human eye.
But authentication, if you could scan in the known varieties and you had a good database, and then you went in and would scan in the suspect coin, which is basically what we do by eye, maybe you have a shot at that. It's just like the information I presented today. Every now and then I'll see a coin and I'll say, that looks familiar. And I go to my good friend Charles's Coin Week, and I search my own articles, and I say, I just did it yesterday. I did it for Jack Riley yesterday. He said, I don't remember seeing this obverse. Yes, in this particular article, and it's the crushed dental obverse. But I actually had to go search for it. There are so many. I mean, I've got 84 articles now on Coin Week, and each one is identifying a counterfeit coin and trying to show the attribution points, and is basically help the hobby. But it's also helping the counterfeiters. We've talked that, and we know that. And so then, you run that fine-edged sword, but I haven't scratched the surface. I mean, I've got files and files of images of coins that, someday I'll investigate, but in the meantime, they may be being sold right now. You don't know.
Well, I think, I say it almost every time we're on here. I think that we will always be smarter than the counterfeiters. And I think that as long as what we're doing here and what you do and your articles and the more people that are getting interested in this type of thing and spreading the word, the harder it's going to be for them. And so maybe they'll give up one of these days. That's what we can hope, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know, and I always say
they'll go on to socks. They'll move on to socks.
I told that story, right? There was the counterfeiter that the Gobrecht came from, okay, was connected to the eBay sellers that disappeared and had a couple coins for sale. And sometime later, I got back to that individual and they told me they were no longer in the coin business. They were in the luxury handbag business. And it's like, okay, that's great.
Yeah, maybe they'll move on. I mean, who knows?
Well, the point is they're still making counterfeits.
I know. Well, as long as they do that, it gives us something to talk about.
Right.
No, this is always fun, and I hope that the people watching are learning something and sharing this information out, because as much as we have a good time doing this, it's still a pretty serious thing, and it's costing people money, and that's what we're fighting against. So we want people to be educated and hopefully, not waste money on things. And I don't know, it's a struggle, but it's fun to do this with you, Jack, and I'm so happy that we did this. And we will be doing more in the future, so you guys make sure that you click that notification bell so that you get notified, and also join Jack's group, Fun with Fakes, on Facebook, because he usually will announce it when we're planning on doing something like this ahead of time. And we usually say something on our Coin Q&A Facebook group also. So, yeah. Jack, do you have something else that you want to say, or no? You want to show that T-shirt off again?
Well, yeah, it's awesome. But no, I appreciate the opportunity. It is always fun. But you're right. It's a serious matter, and we're going to continue to chase these things and see where it goes. The latest thing, of course, is eBay and how you can't report anything anymore. So, I mean, you can report it, but nothing's being removed. And,
yeah. Well, why don't you tell them what just happened this week with that one coin that we.
Well, I posted in my personal page a Morgan and invited and of course showed what was wrong with it. But I've got a lot of coin dealers and a lot of people that know exactly what that coin is. They knew it was counterfeit. And but we just explained it and said, everybody go in, and here's how you report it. Here's the new reporting process, and give it a shot and let me know how it works out. So, I mean, everybody jumped on the bandwagon. I mean, everybody, and we had countless reports, and no one got a favorable response. They got responses, and in fact, I reported it 2 different ways. You can go through that menu and kind of decide how you want to do it. One, you click in intellectual property and it gives you the option to say counterfeit. There's another one about, items that are not allowed, and you go through another whole series of things. And I reported it kind of the same way that Frosty did. And Frosty talked about it. I put the effort into it. I included images and arrows and circles and, kind of like Alice's Restaurant, all the glossy photos, and sent that to them. And I did it twice, and I got 2 different responses. One was from AI, who I called the Baybots, and the Baybots found nothing wrong with the coin or the listing. And the other was the nondescript customer service agent, who we don't know who that is. The night agent said that it wasn't bad either. And, we're just constantly getting that. And, it was interesting because the individual, we contacted him and we said, you're selling a counterfeit. And, often people on eBay that have these coins, they came about them who knows how, but they don't know enough about the coin either. And it had a valid cert number. and you go in, and of course, if you take the time to look at the images, they don't match. But the coin said it was a $900 coin. He had a 585 bid on it. And Paula, you know, I send him images, and I didn't really get a response. And then Paula sent him our Morgan video. And the next thing you know, I get a response back that says, I just saw this video by some guy. And you're right. You're absolutely right. And he actually removed both of them. He had an 81cc and an 83, not Morgan. And he ended both of them. And, you know, that was really cool. But what was really weird after the fact, eBay removed the 80.
I saw that you said that.
Yeah, after he ended it, it's like they got rid of the evidence. It's gone. And it's like, even after we got responses, they weren't going to remove it. So I can't.
Well, good on that seller for doing that.
Absolutely.
You know, that's because we have also talked about that before, that I think the majority of the time, and I'd like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I mean, it's very obvious when you see people that have multiple listings of, you know, the fakes that from China, and Frostbite showed on his thing, that whole eBay listing. Anyway, but I think most of the time, people like that seller have purchased the coins themselves, and they just don't know any better.
Exactly.
You know, and perhaps they're, you know, the third, fourth, fifth, sixth person down the line that has had that coin in their collection and not known. So,
and Jack Riley's been doing good on the Morgans. He's been contacting sellers, and he's got a pretty high success rate of sellers just removing it after he explains to them what it is.
I have 0. That was the first, and that wasn't even my report was not the one that got it taken down. It was the seller who took it down himself, because I think every single one of us in that thread got the same reply back. Not one of us got, you know, we got the first, we're looking into it, and then the wah wah, you know.
Exactly.
It's unfortunate. Yeah.
It is.
But this is still our best recourse, I think, is just teaching everybody out there how to be their best advocate. And so,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, Jack, I'm looking forward to the next one. And everybody that's in the chat, thank you for being here. We appreciate you, and keep an eye out for our next video, and make sure that you are watching out for Jack's next article.
Thank you.
Don't know when that'll be up, but soon, I'm sure. So, all right. Well, on that note, thanks again, everybody, and we will see you on the next one.
And thanks from here's my shirt. Coin Q&A. Woohoo!
Hey.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.